not watching TV.
All right, so when we met, we had about a 4-month window till I left. And having the suspicion that something might happen to me, I unfortunately brought this up to her, which made her be like, okay, well, if something's going to happen to you, I just don't want you to, I don't want to be just some girl back home. I'd rather be your wife. So she actually proposed to me. She said, let's get married. So I'm like, okay, why not, you know? So we got married. And like I said, I know this person since December, and this is in March. So we get married on March 30th. And mind you, I'm leaving April 7th, 8th-ish. And we already got orders. We're going to Fallujah, Iraq. And we get married, and literally the next day, we drive back to Jacksonville, and we stay in a hotel until I leave. So that day leaving was very, I don't want to say surreal. It was just like, okay, this is it. You know, it's just like, it's a buildup of, you're doing all this training. So it's always like, oh, you're going to go do this. So this is what to expect. So you have all these things in your head like, okay, how am I going to act? Am I going to freak out? You know, shit goes down. That's a viable thought. You know, if I see my friend gets hit in the head or blown up by an ID, am I going to flip? You know, but you got, the biggest thing is always you rely on your training. So we leave out of, we drive from Camp Lejeune to Cherry Hill, which is the air wing. We fly out of there, go to Maine. Funny story about that. When we arrive, because all the guys, all the old heads, you know, that have been to Iraq 2 to 3 times, were all like, oh, the deployment's going to go by like that. It's going to be, you're going to be there, and then you're going to be back home. And so we arrive in Maine, and usually, like, the World War II and Korea vets, they'll greet, like a VFW or something will greet you. They thought we were getting back, not leaving. So they were all like, welcome home, guys. Yeah, good job. Wow, that went faster than we expected. And then, like, somebody told them, like, oh, no, these Marines, they're leaving. They're not coming back. And they were like, oh, okay. So we presented them, you know, they always give us gifts, and we give them a gift. So one of our officers gave them a sword, Marine sword, and they gave us, I forget what they gave us, but I remember we gave them a sword. But, you know, they have facilities, and we talk with them. So it's cool talking with these old, like, Korea vets and stuff. One dude got shot, like, 3 times, dragged his buddy 2 miles back in Korea. And he was just like, I'm like, oh man, you're a hero, like, and he's like, oh no, you're the one, you know, that's always, and I'm like, nah, I ain't shit. So we leave, go from like Maine to fly into Iceland, then to Reykjavik, and then from Iceland to Hungary, and then Hungary to Kuwait, I believe. So now, and then you're flying commercial, you know, like a commercial flight, and but when you get into Kuwait, you're on an army base. And so they, you know, you're always getting briefs anytime you arrive somewhere. So it's like, all right, this is an army base. We have army, you know, follow military customs. Not like, because in the field, you don't salute officers. You know, when you're in theater, you don't salute officers and stuff. There's certain things, you know. So they were like, you know, you still salute. And we're just like, yeah, okay, whatever. So it's Kuwait, you know, but it's basically like McDill, you know, has a Starbucks, has a phone center, and, you know, but it's just like a transition before you go in country. So we stay there about a week, and we get a flight out, and we fly in one of those big jets, you know, with like you know how you see like with cargo netting and stuff like that. And so we fly out of Kuwait into Takeda Air Force Base, TQ, in Iraq. And me, being fucking hating flying, we you go in. So when you're coming in, you dodge aircraft fire. They're doing maneuvers. So you come in like this, and then they go boom, and then they move like this to avoid aircraft fire. And like you're just like, a lot of the guys are like, yeah, and I'm like, no, this is how we go. This is how it ends. And then they pull up, and then they land. But they're the best pilots in the world, so I had that, but it's still frightening. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to go out like that. I hate planes. So we arrive in TQ, unload us. We load into these covered trucks, 5 tons, I believe, and they take you from TQ to Fallujah, which I think TQ's like up here, Fallujah's down here. And we've heard all the old stories, like the big story was like this route called Iron, and that was like IED Alley, like you get hit like constantly on there. And so I saw in Fallujah, so it was nighttime, they move you through night, and dude, it looked like a war zone for sure.
What was your first feelings as soon as you're getting into that last flight to get into Fallujah? Like, were you excited? Were you scared?
I was just more anxious to get there and just do it. You know what I mean? Like, just like, let's go, let's get it on. Because like I said, this is what you're being trained to do, and then you're hearing stories. So it's like so you can see like all the, past military campaigns, like the Spartans, oh yeah, I was at Thermopylae, telling the old, new kids, and they're like, all right, well, I can't wait to get into it, So it's kind of like that. But I was just more like, let's get in and go. I wasn't like, oh my God, I'm so terrified, it wasn't like that. But like coming in, like I said, going in through the city, I saw the bridge where they hang the contractors in Fallujah when the contractors got ambushed and they dragged them through the streets and hanged them from the bridge. I saw that bridge. We went right by it. They were like, yep, that's the bridge. And I was more like, some of the guys were like sleeping and stuff. Me, I was like kind of like taking in the sights, like not hyper vigilant, but just like, oh, this is, you can see blown up cars, everything looked shot up to shit. It was like the smell, I could, like certain smells trigger it too. The smell was like burning, like electrical fire. Like I smelled that constantly. So if like I ever smell like electrical, that like instantly takes me back. Like just that smell like gets me every time. Like that and like diesel and like those raw smells really like fuck with me sometimes. So we go in and we go to Camp Fallujah. So it's this big base, and coming into the base they have Saddam's graveyard, and it's literally planes, tanks, and it's just a big graveyard outside of the base where all Saddam's stuff was, and just sitting out there. And we come into Fallujah, and we get billeted in these trailers. Like there's these, trailer, and there's rows of them, just rows. So it's like, you're living in this cool little trailer, which is cool. No bathroom. They have like the facilities are a little down, like shower and toilets and stuff. Okay. Most of the guys, pee in a bottle or something and then dump it later. But, take a number 2, you got to go to the facility. So, but like getting there, everything, like I said, more briefs. You get like, okay, this is the situations now. This is what you have to look for. These are like the big threat when we got there was these things called vehicle-borne IEDs. So the big fear at the time, and EFPs too, explosive form projectiles. But those were more in the city of Baghdad. We didn't really deal with those. But the V-beds were the biggest threat. Would load down a car with a bunch of IEDs or 155 artillery rounds and just track your convoy, because when you're convoying, the traffic's a ways back, about 100 yards back. but they would follow you and wait to the right moment where you're like not paying attention or making a turn and just run into you and blow you fuck up. So that was the big, because those are hard, because you could still, they could just catch you at any moment. IEDs, you run it over, it can mess you up too, but those were the ones that, because all that shrapnel and stuff, that's an explosive force, it could really get you. So those were the big, the electric or the explosive foreign projectiles were, they would make like this weird shape charge, and they would put it like head height, because there's like a lot of berms and stuff over there, but these were mostly in Baghdad. And when they would go off, it had like a reverse charge, so when it hits you, all the molten stuff spit in the vehicle and would just crush you. And but we never, like I said, never dealt with those. So we're getting all these briefs, getting billeted. Then we meet with I think it was Delta, and a Delta company who, we were relieving. We were taking their duty. So we go down to the ramp where they have all the vehicles, and we familiar ourselves. They say, oh, this is your Amtrak. Here's some problems with it. Every vehicle's different, so they try to tell you what to look for, like, oh, the engine wheels suck, you got to replace this constantly, that. So more briefings, more shit like that. So, and then you speak with the guys like, hey man, what's hot? What should I really be looking for? Because talking with with the Marines, that's the best advice, because they're going to tell you like, oh yeah, look out for this one turn, something's always going down. So they fill us in, and like, of course, like the big threat was IEDs and the V-bed. We call them V-beds, the vehicle-borne IEDs, where they ram your convoys. So we get billeted, all set up, and so we started. And this is one of the rare times in history too, where a support group is, because you're either infantry or you're support, but in the Marine Corps, amphibious assault, we provide our own support. Like, we have motor T attached to us and stuff. We were actually the main element, and we had infantry attached to us in support, which is weird. It's usually the other way around. But yeah, Team Gator, we had tows and scouts with us doing patrols and stuff. So what would go on would be how our patrol routes were set up were to the north of the west of the city, or the west of Camp Fallujah. There was 2 platoons that would constantly do like this, and then there was two other platoons that would do to the east, and the western part was more hot than the east, if that makes sense. Like, east was more towards Baghdad, I believe, if I got my directions. So west was more north. They call it the Cloverleaf, to actually go into the city of Fallujah, which is everybody's been there. See the highway signs, Fallujah. I have that picture as well. But that was more near Karma, and if you keep going, it would go to Ramadi, if you kept just going. So our mission was basically to do route. They called it route clearance. Make sure the roads don't have IEDs or anything crazy, so convoys can come in and resupply. So that was, we called ourselves IED sponges, because we'd be the first one to hit IEDs. So now we had a base west on that Western Patrol. We had a base called Outpost Viking, or Outpost, I would say, Outpost Viking, which in the beginning of the war, or the beginning when they were in Fallujah, was an army, and then when the army lost the city and the Marines had to retake it, the Marines claimed it, and they were still claiming it. And then now when we arrived, they were actually handing it back, kind of to jointly. It was going to be a joint with the army, but before it was just straight up Marine post. So it was actually a Brad unit, Bradleys, which are like little tanks out of Fort Benning, Georgia. They got billeted there, and so that was, instead of going back to Camp Fallujah, we would, on the western approach, we would go back to Outpost Viking.
Okay.
And they also called it Mortar Alley because mortars would just come flying in all the time. And so I was the first party there. They pick, they volunteer you to go and kind of be like like setting up rotations of watch and, the area and stuff. So me and a few other Marines, buddies of mine, get sent there. So, and they also have their own counter battery there. So when mortars come in, there was a counter, they would run out and actually they would find where it got sent and they would send rounds back. So I remember like the first night they did counter battery ops, and like that's when you learn incoming and outgoing. So, the sound. So I go immediately outside and they drop it. I thought it was in. I'm like, fuck! And like I run and the Army, I think it was the Army there at that time? I think it was the Army dudes. They're like, all right, calm down. It's outgoing. They're like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, you'll know when it's incoming. So we go and so we're, setting up watch and stuff and just doing like just normal guard duty until they get the infrastructure set up. So finally they get the infrastructure up and we get billeted, and then like I said, at Camp Fallujah you have your like little trailer, and these are like wood huts. And they did have like these little air conditioning units, so it was a little comfy, but they hardly worked, it more at night. But they would freeze over all the time and pain in the ass. But they were like sinking because they like billet you, and then they put like sandbags on top, so, and you're like close to the wall, so if there's a round coming in, it's the least chance to hit you. And very like tight corridors. So, and the main house where all the comms and the higher ups were, it was like this. It used to be like a farm. So they were, I guess they were working with opposition, and the military took over this farm. But it had a nice little weightlifting, gym and stuff, and the like little outhouse area. And we were there too. When we got there was actually a water shortage. We couldn't shower, or it was just drinking water only, because usually you get, and this is the thing of war, so much supply, so much energy just getting supplies and fed, water, fuel, this, that there was a water shortage, because you would just get pallets. Normally we go out on a mission, you just pull up, they're like, all right, how many pallets you want? Oh, give us 2 pallets. They load the pallet on and you're good to go, because water's like gold over there too. You could use that to pay people, like, oh, here, kid helps you, here's a bottle of water. So there was a water shortage, so we were only using just the bottle to reach. So they call it the baby wipe shower. You just take baby wipes and you wipe your stuff down and, try to keep that. And if it rained, I don't think it rained, but, that was the only way. So then when we start getting into the thick, and this was a common tactic, they said, like, usually the first month that you're there, it'll be pretty calm. Nothing happened. They do it because they know when you're coming and going. They know when you're rotating out, rotating in. They'll make it calm, so they make you, they say complacency kills. It says that everywhere over there. Complacency kills, and, the loose lips don't say anything. So we go, and the first month, nothing. I was just like, oh, and then I remember I was on a post, and so on the roads over there, the highway, they have culverts, and so for water drainage. So it's usually like a pipe underneath the road, and for water to go. But you would have to check these constantly, because they love to put IEDs under there and blow your ass up. And I remember like one night we were doing culvert repair, and my staff sergeant goes, hey, what do you think so far? And I'm like, I thought it'd be more fighting. Like immediately, like right when I say that, like I see a flare go off one of the tracks lawns, because we usually light a flare if like somebody's getting too close, and then you could shoot them. And we're just like both at the same time. We thought it sounded like almost like an RPG go off, and they hit it. We're like, fuck. We get down, and he's just like, oh, it was just a warning. Like, but I was like, that's my luck, I say, oh, it's nothing. And then all hell breaks loose. So we fix the culvert up. We get back, and like I said, the ops continue. And my dates are a little mixed up, so it might be out of order in how I'm telling it.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'll just tell it how it goes. I was doing watch, and my section, it goes, your company, and then company has, maybe 4 platoons, and then each platoon has about 3 or 4 sections. About they call it like 3 or 4 vehicles, and my section was going out, but I was on guard duty, and the first vehicle that my staff sergeant was on, my buddy Howard and Mackenzie, they were crossing. We have, when you're doing patrol, you always cross at the same point because and they go and they hit an anti-tank mine on the one go around. I could see it, because I could see the down road and I see the smoke, and I radio. I'm like, hey, is everybody all right over there? They oh, I don't know. And so what happened? They hit the tank, and my buddy Howard, who was driving, all the engine stuff is right here. It exploded, and all that hot oil. He had tattoos, got on his skin, and fucked his arm, and he got sent back home. But the staff sergeant and my buddy Mackenzie were okay, thank goodness. And but the track burned down. Aluminum was quite flammable, more, surprisingly flammable. And plus, the munitions you have on board, enough for a battalion of Marines. Thousands of rounds. It goes up, and then it starts popping off. So then you got to worry about getting hit by one. So that vehicle got hit and burned down, and then and the thing about war too is, especially in Iraq, is it's you never. It's always these weird hit, it's guerrilla warfare. It's always these hit and runs, and it's always hard to see who you're fighting, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like everybody, you're just oh, that guy, it's 'cause, you just don't know. So I remember that one day I was doing the guard duty, and it was just weird, and I don't think it was a coincidence. I see this orange, so this base, it was on on a big corner. So here's the main highway, and then this corner to go to this village. It was right here in this corner. So if you want to go to this village, it's right here. It's this bright orange truck, like a semi with a trailer on it, bright orange, makes a right hand, and I'm okay, that's bizarre. Not because it was just weird. You don't see big trucks going down like that. Then it stops, so it's here's the truck, and it's lined up with the outpost, centered, if that makes sense. And I'm okay, either this motherfucker's gonna blow up, or it's sighting for somebody. Sure as shit, 2 seconds later, fucking mortars start flying in, and one hit 10 yards, and you're in bulletproof, and I'm a little bit elevated too, on a story on top of a building, and it's just sandbags and bulletproof glass, and fucking mortars start coming in, and I fucking freak, and I get down, thank goodness, and a fucking basketball-sized piece of shrapnel hit where I was standing, where it was, and I'm if that fucking glass, it broke the fucking glass, but I was I could have got decapitated, and that was okay. So those were the two big first okay, we're in a war zone. It's not going to be calm, so to say. So they. Then the truck just went off, just turned and peeled out. So I'm there's something up with that. That they were sighting in, but they said they used this technique, and I think they did it in Vietnam as well. They would freeze twos, because they knew we have counter battery, and we could send a round out in 30 seconds, and they would freeze the water inside, and then the hole would as it froze and it thawed, and they put a round on top, so when it comes down, it would just launch, but nobody's there. It would just launch and then hit you, and then you counterbarrel go down and you don't hit anything. So that was the big one to like really come in and affect me. So going back to patrolling, and like I was saying, when you're in theater, and more in Iraq, I don't know about Afghanistan. I wasn't in Afghanistan, especially the first time. It's like 90% boredom. I wouldn't even say that. I would say it's 95% boredom, and then 5% just fucking chaos, where just all hell breaks loose. So, you know, you're doing your patrols, and, you know, you get used to, it's like you're almost like at home. You know what's off. You know, something doesn't look right. You know, it's just, something's a little off. Let's watch here or something. So, the few more incidences we had was, like I said, we were working with Bradley unit, and they patrolled more through the village. Like I said, with that, we were on the corner, and there was a few villages outskirt over here. On the hottest day of the year, it was like, man, like 115 degrees, something hot. It was so hot by 8 o'clock in the morning, you know, your track's aluminum. If you didn't have gloves on, you burn your hand, like on the metal, climbing in, and like just any bare skin, it would just burn you. So we were patrolling, and they got ambushed at a village. And they didn't. We had our own Marine air captain who, you know, coordinated air. We always had air, you know, patrolling with us and giving us support. They didn't have air, and they get ambushed. And then you see kind of like politics of war too, which is so stupid. They get ambushed, and we could see it happening. Like, we could be like, dude, we have so much munitions. We can go in there and fuck shit up, rescue people, whatever. We could do evacs. We requested, you know, our captain, even though we had another, you know, section that could do the patrol, we called our captain and be like, hey, could we come help these guys? They're getting fucked up. And the captain was like, nope. Your priority is the route, to clear it. And it's like, well, we have 3 other, you know, we could fill in, you know, help these guys out. So we're just watching them. And they were like, my staff sergeant said, fuck it, let's coordinate air with them. So we coordinate the air. Air comes in and just starts fucking laying down, you know, rounds and shit and strafing. And later, so we're just watching because, you know, you want to get in and help them. They said they're like, and you could hear it on the radio, you know, the chatter on the radio. It was so bad, the guys were going down with heat strokes too. So they're like having IVs hooked up to them, and they're fighting with like IVs hooked up. Like, and there was a river right there. And they were taking turns going in and like cooling off and then coming out and fighting and shit. And they're fighting through this. And I think they lost like 4 guys. And I remember seeing the staff sergeant that night in the shower. I'm just like, hey, staff sergeant, you know, that was a rough one, man. Are you guys okay? You know, are you okay? He's like, yeah. You know, he was fucking shook up. And the Army guys. But they were pretty good, you know. And I just, you know, see that, like the cap. I guess, yeah, you focus on your mission, but the life, you could see, like, the life wasn't priority, and that's kind of open your mind. Another kind of weird thing, kind of fucked up, happened as well was we would have anybody in our operation would have to coordinate with us to, you know, go, because it was our area. So it'd be like, hey, permission, can we patrol or come through here? We'd be like, sure, yeah, whatever. So we had this tank platoon, or however they structure section, come through, and you know, we're providing them. We're like, hey, if you need support, you know, because they don't provide their own support. So if like they don't get out of their tanks to be like, all right, there's an ID, you know, they're like, oh, can you call? Like we provide our own support. So they call us up and like, hey, we see, or we hear over the radio like, hey, there's 3 military, because the ROE's rules of engagement at the time was anybody playing a covert, you fucking kill them, because they're usually playing, you know. So the guys are like, we could hear the chatter like, oh, we see 3 military-aged males playing, you know, in this covert, you know, looking up and down. What do we do? So they called up permission. And they said, could we fire? So they requested, and it came down, said, yeah, fire. So they fucking launched a round And they called us, hey, can you verify the kill, basically? Can you go check up what's out? They fucking killed 3 kids playing a fucking culvert. And the mom, it was like going to check it out. The mom was just holding a torso of her baby. And one of my buddies picks up, he thought it was a paintbrush, but it was a baby's arm. And he was like, oh, you know, and so you go through that, you know, they do official shit, you know, we had these things like with compensation, like call this not, fucked up shit. Yeah. And so then you know, go back to propaganda. I remember the next day they had the Stars and Stripes over there. They were like, I read this article. Oh, like, the article was like, oh, the tank battalion kills 3 insurgents trying to plant an IED, and you know, supported by 2nd A tracks. So you're like, wait a second, no, we fucking killed 3 fucking innocent kids. So you see that they're not going to report that. They're not going to be like, hey, we fucked up and killed 3 kids. So
would they ever try to come to your base? Like, I know they would do these little shyster side things.
They would launch rounds, and so and it's kind of eerie what it sounds like when they launch rounds in. We have counter battery and those. I don't know, at the time they had some sort of anti device, and like you would hear it. It sounds terrifying. Like if you hear it, it's not a calming thing. It's like, incoming, wah, 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 incoming. You know, so, you know, when you first hear it, it's like those, like I said, like, you know, outgoing, incoming. When you first hear it the first time, you know, oh, they have these like little metal, these concrete huts, I guess you would call them. You go into them, and, you know, it's to protect you from blasts. They're thick. But, you know, when you're there and get accustomed, you kind of don't give a fuck. You're like, man, if it hits me, it hits me. Because then it's a guy like, oh, look at that dumbass, you know, newbie running into it. So it's like you do that, and people are like, you know, like that, like, oh, look at him running. So you're just like, and it's so stupid too, because then, you know, it's like I remember, like, we were on a night patrol, and I'm like, you know, I had to take a shit. So we usually use these ammo crates, and we transform them into like a toilet. We put it back, you know, you could you know, just like these little handy duty things. And usually when you take a shit, you know, tell you, hey, I'm going to be over here. I'm going to take a shit. So whatever. And usually, you know, you get comfortable. You don't want to be taking a shit, you know, with all your stuff. You take your rifle, obviously. But so I'm like taking a shit, and I hear bing, like, okay, and like I start to like continue, tink tink, and I hear it, and you know, like somebody shooting at me, and I'm like, I didn't give a fuck. I just wanted to take the shit, and then I'm just like, hey, Corporal, somebody shoot me. There's somebody over there. Like, just like, it's so like nonchalant, and I'm not wearing a helmet. It's not like oh, let me get my gear on. Like, you're just like, whatever, fuck, and you know, we go check it out. They usually just try to hit you and then run, and then like you just get accustomed to the, you know, just shit. Like I said, like at Outpost Viking, you would, you know, the incoming would come in, and I remember one time my buddy wakes me up. He's like, hey man, there's incoming coming in. Like, he all had his flak. I'm just like, hey, hand me my flak. And I was sleeping, and he hands it to me, and I just like put it on me like a blanket, like it's gonna do anything. And I just go back to sleep. And he was like, so like, he was just like, so like, Jesus, like, you don't even give a fuck. I'm like, you know, I just want to sleep. Yeah. I don't give a fuck. So you just become like jaded, I guess, towards that shit. And yeah, so the worst day, I would say, there was a couple, was another section that was doing our patrols. Like I remember that mentioned those culverts that you know, we would, you know, have to occasionally fix, put barbed wire in. A big tactic too, how they would get us or try to blow us up would be they would use acetylene tanks. but they would fill them with charge and then throw them over underneath the culverts and then wait for us to go and then blow them up so it'd get our vehicles. I don't think the blast did much, but if it overturned the vehicle, it could disable it or kill somebody. And that's what happened. Was a section, and I think it was because we were Red 1. I think it was Blue 3 or Blue 2. So they were the third platoon, and it was actually my friend Jamie's, one of his best friends, DiGiovanni and Celestine. And I believe what happened was they were doing the patrol, and they were the last vehicle, and they put the acetylene tank on the culvert, and it blew them up. And what happened was the hatches were open. So Celestine, who was a radio guy, got blown up, and at the same time, the track went on the sideways and landed on him. And then DiGiovanni got shrapnel and made him cut him right here and killed him. So that was bad. And but my friend Enos, and I think the staff sergeant was in, so it must have been the first vehicle. They survived. He had to pull the staff sergeant out, and the staff sergeant wasn't right after that. They put him in the COC, and he had the COC, the command operations, and he had a fear of leaving the COC. That was his safe zone. So you can see how it affects people. And then another bad time, like I said, occasionally we would pull vehicles over and do searches, especially if they were doing something suspicious. We pulled this one vehicle over, and I was always on the ground team. It was me and my friend Jamie. I had a shotgun and an A2 M16A2 AR rifle, but I usually just carry the shotgun. And but it was usually me and Jamie hit the ground first, and then usually there was a rotating third. It was either Dixon, who was another comm guy, or Ward, who was a mechanic on our track. So for whatever reason, we pulled up. My corporal said, "Wait, don't go down yet." I'm like, "Okay." So Jamie and Celestine get down, and when you're over there, you don't want to sit still. It looks funny, and you can watch videos. If you watch guys in Iraq, they'll kind of looks like they're dancing almost. And what it is so somebody's got their sights on you, they can't kind of pinpoint. So it's more of them trying to to miss you. And so Celestine's here's the car, Dixon is right here, and Jamie's searching the car in the trunk, and Dixon goes down. And I'm like, I see it, and I'm like, I thought he had a heat stroke or something, usually. And Jamie just kind of grabs him and throws him. And I was like, oh no, it's more serious. And then we start shooting at cars because we stop them 100 yards. And so over the radio, we start racing towards, there was this outpost that we could do medevacs at, the military hospital. And you could hear over the radio, Jamie's like, yeah, he's out. He got shot through the side. So we were, flak, but the sides are very vital. There's a little plate there, but that's not going to do much. So he got shot, boom, through there. And we go to the hospital. They medevac him, and he never regained consciousness. He died. So that was very rough. And my staff sergeant was like, yeah, we're not fucking pulling cars anymore. It's not worth it. It's not. I want to hear about karma. And weird, about a couple weeks later, they found this, I think it was Iraqi police found this guy trying to plant an IED. And they searched his vehicle and found a videotape. And they played it. And what it had was, this guy was following us, this one patrol, and waited for us. Because, like I said, when we turn around, we'd hold traffic, and we would turn around. And, that guy could easily, when it gone, just went boop, and right integrated. We would never picked up on it. So he was following us. And we did get out I got out a couple times. to fix a culvert or do something. And then you could see it when we pull over and my buddy Jamie's searching the car, and Celsius stops. You go out and you see the camera, the guy shoots that one shot and gets him, and gets back in and peels out. And my staff sergeant Jamie had to do the trial because they did like a teletrial because in Baghdad, he was in they got sent him to Baghdad for arraignment and prosecution, and I think they hanged him. Yeah, because that was enough evidence. So just weird, that's wild, because you didn't think who the guy was, and they caught him. And with video evidence,
which is never going to happen often out there.
Which is never.
That's so rare.
Yeah. So we go after Dixon passed away. We were just like, let's just get out of here alive. We, as shitty as that sounds, we were about. When did he pass away? I want to say it was in July. So April, May, June, July. We still about had 5 months, but we were just more like, we're not going to pull over. We're not just going to stop. We call them a cordon and knock, where you just stop somebody, search them, and whatever. We didn't want to just keep doing that. We were just like, fuck it. We'll do it if we have to, but for bullshit, we're not going to fucking do it. So the rest, we had a few engagements here, there. We were trying to figure out. One more story. This is when Dixon was alive. When we were patrolling, we kept on. There was this white car that was pulled over, and we saw a driver in it. And we're like, "Huh, that's weird. He hasn't moved." After a couple times, so then we're like, "Something's off." So we cordon off the area, and they call out the EOD, explosive ordnance disposal out, and the dude, he had his hands duct taped to the steering wheel, but he had a bullet wound in his head. He was dead. But in the trunk, they had some artillery rounds ready to blow. So they were waiting for the opportune time. And this is kind of the morose humor in the military. You just get accustomed to morbidity and shit. Dixon and the staff sergeant was like, all right, we got to put the body in the body bag. And Dixon was just like, well, what do I do? He's like, well, just grab him. He ain't gonna bother you. He's dead. So it's like, kind of like morbid shit. And but like I said, those were the biggest fear, those V beds, because they would just fucking wreck your day. And we were trying to find out how. We knew what they were doing, but we were just trying to find how their organization, the structure was of how are they planning to do these. And we befriended a local village that usually we noticed like a lot of activity was heading around. And, give them water, food, like I said, like water was like gold. You give them these big waters. And they're poor, they're poor over there. Usually it's a village. And, the wealth disparity was like a village, a field, and then this big fucking mansion in the back, the imam. He was the head of the village. And so we, befriended the village and talked to the imam, and then we started getting intel on, when they say hearts and, win hearts and minds of war so they can help you. We found out that how they were doing it is obviously they knew our routes, they knew our times. They would have kind of a sophisticated system where they would have a guy on a bike, and it had it rigged where this det wire was really thin and gold. It was really hard to see, and it would, when he was riding, it would they had a system where it would unfurl. So he'd go along a predetermined path, unfurl this wire, then go. And this is while our patrol's going. Then a car with a false bottom would pull up, boom, boom, connect, and then boom, out. Then the third guy, or maybe the guy on the bike or another guy, would come up, and all it took was a D battery, and they would wait. until we pass, and then doop, blow, throw the battery, and just walk off. And that was just that, like that. And they would pay these guys, they say the insurgency, they would basically say, hey, do this, or we'll fucking kill and rape your family. Yeah. So what are you going to do? I'd do it, Here's $100. Plant this fucking IED.
It's never the guy you wanted to catch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they're smart. They're not going to put some high official to plant IEDs. They're going to take a poor person and be like, hey, here's $100 or we'll fucking murder your family. Yep. So they would do that. And then so we started, getting the more intel and doing more raids. While I was there, too, they had the big, I believe it was I want to say it was the Haditha massacre. That was when I think it was the Marine, recon or some infantry unit went and supposedly massacred this village. And one of our friends knew somebody in that unit that was there. They were like, nah, they fucking fired on us. So they think what kind of happened, I'm a little vague with it, but I think what happened with the Marines is they did get fired, but somebody came up, collected all the evidence, bounced. So when they came, like, oh, you massacred, So then it's, the Americans, just killing Iraqis. Because that's more useful than be like, oh, the village fired upon them. So that was, I think, big when I was there. Or, yeah, that was happening. And like I said, then you're just doing patrols. You have your, we were 12 on, 12 off patrols. And then we would go back to Fallujah occasionally to do maintenance on our vehicles, a little bit of downtime, usually like 3 days. Downtime. And that's where you call home. And, I'd call, my wife at the time, my mom, my dad. And like I said, I'd tell my mom, I wouldn't tell her much. I'd just be like, oh, I'm just doing security, not tell her like real shit. Yeah. But they would have things which was called River City. It was a keyword. It was basically say, hey man, we're River City, don't bother. Like a normal person would be like, what the fuck does that mean? Means basically something happened, they'll cut the phones, so you couldn't contact anybody. Like if somebody got shot, killed, all the communication, because they want to control the information. Something big happened or something big was about to go down. Like I know we were River City, of course, a few times, and then when George Bush came to Iraq, I think it was on Thanksgiving. He didn't come to Camp Fallujah, but I think he went to TQ Air Base. I remember we were River City. Communications was cut. So, but like I said, downtime, we watched a lot of movies. They would sell bootleg DVDs for like
what
$1.
About drugs out there?
Drugs? The first time and drink? No, it was very hard because you were in the military environment and there wasn't much civilians. They had contractors.
Like
yeah, no, that was the second. That'll come on the second time. So, like in Fallujah, it was still like the Wild Wild West. It was like legit war still going on, and it wasn't like the second time when I went over to Ramadi. So, like I said, it was pretty much those big incidents. We had a few skirmishes here, few skirmishes there. Talking with the people and getting that intel was good. And then going back, coming back home was great. It was, you get done, wind down, and then come home and you're back. But, I was having marital issues pretty much immediately coming back. It was very... your personality changes a little bit. So they, my wife was like, you're like almost like a different person, like coming because this shit affects you. And you think about things differently, especially when traumatic stuff like that happens, and you're just like, I was very hyper vigilant, just always like, I was quick to anger. I slept with, I had a gun, I had anxiety if I didn't have a gun near me. which the military teach, especially in the Marine Corps, you always have your gun within arm's length, so like coming back to that environment, you almost like then like stuff starts to hit you, like survivor's guilt, because we had some guys we lost, or a couple other my friends got injured, shot in the arm, or Howard got hurt with the oil and the burns from the blast. So it's like almost like you're mentally compacting everything, and then when you come home, it's like a faucet. It's like you start to remember stuff, and then it's just like, phew, then all of a sudden it'll just hit you. It hit me. I was in Delaware with my family, and I remember they were setting fireworks off, or we were by a bonfire or something. I think they saw, and I was walking into the house, and it was like a good 25, 30 yards like to my brother's house, and like all this went whoo, like just hit me. Like I had to run into the house. Like I thought we were gonna like ambush or something, and like I went up in the bathroom, and I was like so like distraught, and like started banging my head against the fucking wall, and like it just hit me. Like I don't know. My brother was worried. He's like, should I call call the ambulance? And I didn't know what to do. My wife didn't know what to do, and I finally like calmed down, and just slapped it off. We didn't talk about it, So that was certain things would trigger me, I guess.
And that leads to drug use and things like
that.
For vets commonly, I know, and suicide and everything else.
Yeah, so I lost. So for my weight loss, I had a bunch of excess skin, and on it affected my military appearance, you could say. I always looked bigger than what I was, and I had a buddy also that got a skin removal surgery, and I wanted that too because it would be better military appearance, and just to get rid of it was more like self-confidence and stuff like that. So I got referred to get this surgery done when I got back because they said I could do it when I got back from Iraq. And like I said, when I was coming back, I was drinking pretty heavily. I was drinking about a case or so a night of beer and liquor on top. And I got the surgery done, and that was probably the worst thing I could have done. And what it did was I get the surgery done, they prescribe me painkillers, and I get addicted to them. And so I was only supposed to be on painkillers maybe 1-2 weeks most, because like with the surgery they cut you open, they take the excess fat, and I get addicted, because I'm just like, hey, when I drink and I take these pills, it makes me feel good and blocks out shit. So I was like, I would say it malinger. I was like, hey, I'm still hurting, doc. Is it supposed to, can you give me some more painkillers?
They say that's common with addicts too.
Yeah, I was like, it hurts, So they were just like, it should be healed. So they would kind of just like, okay, because I had a different doctor. So in the military too, you have like they call it a BAS, Battalion Aid Station, which is it's basically like I would equate it to like nurse station. And then you have like the main side hospital where like there's real doctor. No, I want to say real doc, but real doctors. Yeah, let's say that. So I was more consultant main side. So they were just like just normal guy, and they're like okay, And so what happened was I was taking advantage of it. I was just because I had time off and stuff, and I would go down to Florida while So they started after the routine of they were starting the cool down, and then now that everybody's starting to get back in the routine, and then workups to go back the second time. So our second date, we were going to Ramadi in I want to say September of 08. Yeah, September of 08, excuse me. And so it was like an 8-month turnaround, I believe. So, like I said, for the first couple months, I had the surgery maybe like a month and a half in. I was, taking time, and I was taking advantage of it. Shit. And what happened, it came to a head where I went into the battalion aid station, and I still had tubes hanging from me. It was these blood, they call them blood tubes, and it just drains excess fat and blood, and you would empty them out. But there were tubes. And we were going out in the field, and I thought it'd be a no-brainer, and they would be like, oh yeah, you're unfit because you have fucking tubes sticking out of you. They were like, oh no, you're going to go to the field. Everybody's going to the field. And I'm like, but my major at the same time said no, I had to still heal, because it still took for your your stomach to adhere to abdominal wall, you have to have at least like 4 months or something. Okay. Like just of not strenuous activity just for it to heal. And it didn't, I don't think it came that time yet. And they were like, oh no, you're going to participate. And I'm just like, well, my major, that outranks you says no. So and then the fucking chief was like, oh, you pull that shit. Oh, you're a Marine. You do what you're told. And I'm like, all right, well, it's my health. And if I get hurt, you're going to fucking take care of me. Basically said it like that. I didn't give a fuck. And then, sure shit, we go to this field. It's called Fort A.P. Hill. I think it was in Virginia. And they put me like on cook duty. But mind you, I'm still not supposed to be moving. I'm supposed to be resting. And guess what happens? My fucking side literally whoop, tears and pops out. And I go to the same chief who's like, hey, Marine, do what you're told. And I'm like, told you. He was like, oh. They were freaking out because, and then at the same time, my wife got kidney stones. So she was calling, and she had nobody to take care of her. So they were but they were like, the captain, the battalion sergeant major was like, went to my doc, who I was in Iraq with, and was like, hey, is he malingering? He's like, no, he's a good Marine, he had the surgery. I don't know why they cleared him. So they had to literally go, because they didn't have the medicine. You had to go out in the town and fill a painkiller, and, I probably didn't need the painkiller, but they had to get the medicine to, heal me. And they still didn't, they were just like, oh, we'll leave in a few days. We'll take you out then. So, and even my uncle, who was a previous Marine, who was so pissed, and my dad, they thought about calling the big thing in the military is if a representative gets called or a senator, to check up on shit, because then that brings heat to the unit, and they don't like that shit. They just no news is good news type deal. And my uncle was like, I'm gonna call. And I was like, please don't. It'll just cause me more fucking shit, and I don't need more shit. But this time, it was kind of like a blank ticket. It was, because then now they were just like, take as long as you want to heal. So I took advantage of that. So, but it fucked me in the long run. So I had to get a second surgery done, and I remember when I got they had to cut open scar tissue. It was very painful when I got out. I remember the first time I had a morphine drip. This time I didn't, and they were just giving me 1 or 2 painkillers. I'm like, what the fuck, Because like I said, as silly as it sounds, I didn't know I was addicted to painkillers. Yeah. I know that sounds silly. I was like, oh, a doctor's giving it to me. It just makes me feel good. Yeah. It shouldn't, couldn't be bad. I was that ignorant to it. I didn't know you could get addicted to that. And because I didn't really mess with painkillers or any pills, or I didn't know anything about it. So, like I said, that was that, and they prescribed me a couple times, and then now I got to a point where I was just kind of off time. I would check in with my unit occasionally, And when I did one time, my sergeant comes up, basically says, hey, he's like, hey, you know, we're going to start doing workup soon. I know, he's like, I know, basically worded is like, hey, start doing shit or we're going to have to drop you basically to another battalion. You can't deploy. And I wanted to deploy again. So he was like, you better heal soon because once we start doing workups and you can't do it, we're going to drop you to another battalion. Meaning, you know, he knew what the deal was, and nobody was And so the funny when you get that time in the military, it's like, you know, being paroled. You know, you're like, oh yeah, you know, good for him. You know, so but everybody, you know, Staff Sergeant was like, look, you gotta fucking pull the nose up, do it. So I started, and it was like really rough because, you know, I wasn't working out. I gained a lot of weight, and like when I was in Iraq the first time, you know, I got really strong. I was working out. I was really healthy. So then I gained a lot of weight back, and then. Like I said, I started developing, you know, I was like, when I would stop taking pain, I'm like, why do I feel like shitty? You know, all of a sudden when I stopped doing the pills. And I knew a guy in the military who was also a friend of mine. He had a Connect where I can get Oxycontin. And he's like, oh yeah, you still messing with that? He's like, oh, take this. He's like, you just need a little bit of this to feel, you know, and sure shit, you know. And I was drinking on this, and even in backing up on my second surgery, when they put me under, the anesthesiologist asked my wife, like, how much does he drink? And she was just like, oh, you know, he drinks like 12. He was like, it took so much anesthesia to put him under. And like he was like, it was so much. He was like, you need to, you know, cut it. So that was like noted in my record. And then like I remember we were going somewhere for the weekend. And usually I hit the dock up Friday, so I had my ship. And he wasn't returning my calls or anything. And then he calls my wife and says, hey, you know, you got to tell Marcello, like, we can't prescribe him anymore. And basically told her, like, he's probably got a problem. Better keep an eye on it.